Welcome to Style and Confidence, where transformative coaching meets personal styling for business success. I'm your host, Claire Silk, a transformative life coach and a personal stylist, passionate about helping women like you align your inner worth with your outer expression. Each week, we explore how to build lasting confidence from the inside out, so you can show up as your most authentic, empowered self. Whether you're looking to break through limiting beliefs, build authentic confidence and a winning mindset, or create a wardrobe that truly empowers you, you are in the right place. Get ready to transform your relationship with both your mind and your style. Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Style and Confidence, where we explore the connection between personal style, confidence and business success. Every day we get dressed, or at least you should do. Every day, the clothes that you choose to wear tell a story, not only to the outside world, but also to you. Every single day, often without much conscious thought, we express ourselves through what we wear. But what are you saying? Think about what you put on this morning. Was it a carefully considered outfit that you took time to assemble? Maybe it was something you grabbed quickly because you're running late. Or perhaps it's a uniform required for your work. Whatever the case, that collection of fabric draped over your body is doing far more than just keeping you warm or indeed meeting social norms of modesty. It's telling a story about who you are. When I first became a mum, I had a huge shift in my life and what I was wearing. I went from working in fashion on a buying floor, making a conscious effort with what I wore every day. I felt good in my clothes all the time. Then, almost overnight, I started to wear leggings and clothes that didn't matter if they got baby sick down them. So black was out. As my children grew, I needed clothes that didn't matter if they got food smeared on them or paint splatters from our latest art project. I loved my new life, but the clothes I was wearing didn't matter. And the story they were telling me and other people was that I didn't matter. After a couple of years, I made a decision to start wearing nice clothes again. Clothes that I felt good in. I made one change that made a big difference. I started to wear a blazer more often. You might have your own hero piece, but for me, I have a long-standing love affair with blazers. I swapped the cardigans I would wear with a top and jeans, or leggings indeed, for blazers. This was one small shift, but instead of feeling like I was slobbing around in jeans, a top and a cardigan again, I started to feel a bit more put together, more intentional. Just this one change elevated my outfit, my thoughts, and the message I sent out into the world about who I was. So, how do our clothing choices reflect, shape, and communicate who we are? Are we truly expressing our authentic selves through the way we dress, or are we simply responding to social pressures and expectations? And how does what we wear affect not just how others see us, but how we see and experience ourselves? I'm going to explore these questions in this episode. First, we'll examine the psychological foundations of dress and identity. Next, we'll look at how clothing functions as a complex social signalling system. Then, we'll place these personal choices in broader cultural and historical contexts. And finally, as I always like to, we'll discuss some practical applications of this knowledge for your everyday life. I really enjoyed putting together the research for this episode. I love everything to do with fashion psychology and fashion history. It is so fascinating understanding where it all came from and how we have got to where we are today. So, whether you're a fashion enthusiast or someone who just wears the same outfit formula every day, by the end of this episode, you'll be looking at your wardrobe in a whole new way. Let's start by understanding the fundamental psychological mechanisms at play when we get dressed each morning. In 1959, sociologist Erving Goffman published his groundbreaking work, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. This proposed that social interactions are essentially performances. According to Goffman, we're all like actors on a stage, consciously and subconsciously, managing the impressions we make on other people. He holds that when someone comes into contact with another person, they attempt to control or guide the impression the other person will form of them by altering their own setting, appearance, and manner. Our clothing serves as a critical part of this performance. It's essentially our costume for the various roles we play throughout our lives. Goffman introduced the concept of front, which includes our appearance, manner, and setting, and clothing is a key element of our personal front. It helps us establish the character we want to portray in different social situations. Think about how differently you might dress for a job interview versus a casual dinner with friends, or a first date versus a family gathering. Each context calls for a different costume because we're effectively playing different versions of ourselves. However, our clothing does more than just symbolise meaning. It actually has the power to shape our cognitive processes and behaviours. When we put on a formal suit, as discussed in last week's episode following the Met Gala, we may actually think and act more confidently. When we wear workout clothes, we might be more inclined to make healthy choices. In his 2002 work, Fashion as Communication, Malcolm Barnard further explores how clothing functions as a complex system of signs and symbols. He argues that fashion isn't just about aesthetic preferences or comfort. It's a sophisticated language through which we communicate aspects of our identity, values, aspiration, and our social position. The remarkable thing about this language is that it operates on both conscious and subconscious levels. Some mornings, you may deliberately choose an outfit to convey a specific message, and at other times, your choices might be guided by less conscious factors, such as internalized social norms or deep-seated psychological needs for belonging or differentiation. What's particularly fascinating is that this non-verbal communication through our clothing is bidirectional. By that I mean, not only does it send messages out towards other people, but it also sends messages inwards towards ourselves, reinforcing certain aspects of our identity and potentially even altering our thoughts and behaviours. Now that we understand the psychological foundations, let's explore how clothing functions as a social signalling system. Recent research in 2018 examined how clothing serves as powerful social markers that help us navigate complex human interactions. This research found that people make instantaneous judgments about other people, their social class, education level, values, and even personality traits based on their clothing choices. And many of these judgments occur within milliseconds of first sight. These clothing-based signals help us identify potential allies, mates, competitors, and threats in our social environment. They allow us to quickly determine who might share our values and interests, who holds power or authority, and who belongs to our tribe. If we take the same basic principle back to caveman times or even look at animals, this would be down to survival. Now, of course, we don't need it for survival, but this is still how our brains work. This concept of tribal signalling through clothing is further developed by the theory of appearance management. This suggests we negotiate our identities through appearance-related behaviours, including the way we dress. Through clothing, we can signal our affiliation with various social groups, whether it's a religious community, a professional field, a football team, a political movement, or a cultural subculture. Think about the stereotypes we've adopted that immediately signal membership in certain communities. For example, the business professional in a tailored suit, or an academic in an elbow-patched tweed blazer. Whilst we now have more diversity and times have changed, we still hold these stereotypes. These weren't just arbitrary aesthetic choices, though. They were non-verbal declarations of belonging and identity that these people had within their groups. What's particularly interesting is how this social signalling function operates within complex power structures. Howlett and colleagues demonstrated this in their 2013 research, finding that minor variations in professional attire significantly affected perceptions of the wearer's competence, authority, and their trustworthiness. Their experiments showed that people rated identical candidates as more competent and were more likely to hire them when they wore formal business attire compared to more casual options. This brings us to an important point about the double-edged nature of clothing as self-expression. Whilst the way we dress gives us a powerful tool for communicating our identity, it also subjects us to other people's interpretations and judgments, which may or may not align with our intentions. The signal we aim to send might not be the signal that's being received, especially across cultural or generational boundaries. For instance, what one person intends as a sign of respect, such as formal dress, might be interpreted by others as being pretentious. What one person sees as authentic self-expression, like visible tattoos or bold hair colours, might be read by others as unprofessional or a rebellion. The message is always mediated by the cultural lens of the receiver. This dynamic highlights the inherent tension in using our clothes as self-expression. It's simultaneously personal and social, liberating and constraining. It is a form of communication that's both incredibly nuanced and frequently misinterpreted. For these reasons, it is really important that we consider what we are wearing and how we can use it to express ourselves, send the message we want to ourselves, and the message we want to other people. Who knew there was so much to getting dressed? The language of clothing isn't universal or timeless. It is deeply embedded in cultural and historical contexts that shape its meanings and possibilities. The book Fashion, Culture and Identity by Fred Davies explores how fashion operates as a form of cultural expression with inherently ambivalent communication. Davies argues that fashion's meanings are always unstable and context dependent. The same garment can signify wealth and status in one era or culture, and something entirely different in another. Consider how the humble blue pair of jeans have transformed their social meaning over time. From starting out life as utilitarian workwear for miners and labourers in the late 19th century, to symbols of youthful rebellion in the 50s, and now to the mainstream casual wear we see today, even often worn at work in an office. The garment itself didn't change dramatically, but its cultural associations and signifying power certainly did. Similarly, we can see this in the way that fashion has changed in ways that mirror the evolution of women in society. We've moved from restrictive corsets to flapper dresses to power suits to the Y2K trend involving bold colours and lots of skin bearing to activewear. What we wear is never just an individual's choice, as it moves with society, and we have to pick from what is culturally available and within social norms at the time. As well as social influences, we have cultural differences. What's considered appropriate, attractive, or high status varies enormously across different societies. In some cultures, exposing the shoulders might be taboo, whilst in others, it's perfectly acceptable. Bright colours might signify joy and celebration in one context, but mourning in another. These cultural differences remind us that the psychological impact of what we wear is never universal. And then, of course, we have social media. Social media platforms have created global style communities that transcend geographic boundaries, accelerating the exchange of fashion ideas and the emergence of new subcultural styles. At the same time, algorithms work to sort us into increasingly specific style tribes as we get bombarded with what we searched for on just one occasion, reinforcing our existing preferences rather than exposing us to diversity in our sartorial expression. This fascinating and complex landscape means that self-expression through the way we dress is always a negotiation between personal desire, social expectation, cultural tradition, and historical influence. Anyway, I could geek out on the history of fashion for days. So, what can you actually do with all this knowledge? As ever, knowledge is power. First, we can become more intentional about our dress choices by recognising their psychological impact. Research has shown that what we wear can make us feel stronger and more confident, and it can enhance abstract thinking and negotiation outcomes. This suggests that strategically choosing certain garments before challenging situations, whether it's a presentation, difficult conversation, or an important meeting, can actually shift our mental state and improve our performance. It's not just about looking the part, it's about providing our brains with symbolic resources that enhance our capabilities. We often think like this before job interviews, but use more of this in your everyday life. Second, understanding clothing psychology can help us align our external presentation with our authentic selves. I recommend my clients regularly go through a wardrobe audit, thinking about questions like, does this reflect who I am now? And Does wearing this make me feel like me? This practice can help identify disconnects between our evolving identity and our clothing habits. Third, this knowledge can enhance our empathy and reduce appearance-based judgment of others. When we recognise that clothing is a complex form of self-expression, shaped by countless psychological, social, and cultural factors, we become less likely to make simplistic judgments about others based on their appearance. Finally, there are important ethical considerations around appearance-based judgments, conscious or subconscious, that all this research highlights. Studies consistently show that clothing-based biases affect outcomes in education, healthcare, legal settings, and employment. Being aware of these biases is the first step towards mitigating their impact on important life decisions and opportunities, both in terms of being careful about our own judgments and using this to our advantage. As you think about your own relationship with clothing, consider both its expressive potential and its limitations. Clothing can be a powerful tool for communicating identity and your personal brand, but it is just one of many tools. True self-expression typically requires multiple channels, not just what we wear, but also what we say, create, and how we behave. As we come to the end of this episode and finish our exploration of the psychology of self-expression through dress, let's review the main points I covered. First, we established the psychological foundations of clothing choices. From Goffman's presentation of self-theory, we saw how dress functions as a crucial element in the characters we play in our daily lives, with our choices of clothing changing how we think and behave. Next, we examined clothing as a social signalling system, how we use the way that we dress to identify allies and establish group affiliations, how we negotiate our identities through appearance, and how clothing influences perceptions of competence and authority with real consequence for our professional lives. We then looked at our personal choices within broader cultural and historical contexts, and how the changing dress codes across time revealed that meanings behind clothing are never fixed and are constantly evolving. Finally, we discussed practical applications, how strategic clothing choices can enhance our performance, how wardrobe reflection can align our external presentation with our authentic selves, and how understanding the psychology of fashion can foster greater empathy and reduce appearance-based judgment. What I hope you take away from this episode is not a set of rules to complicate getting dressed, but rather I hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for the remarkable complexity of the seemingly simple act of getting dressed each morning. Let this empower you, not restrict you. Our clothing choices are simultaneously personal expressions and social communications. They reflect who we are, who we want to be, and how we want to relate to others. By becoming more conscious of these dimensions, we can approach getting dressed not just as a practical necessity or aesthetic concern, but as a meaningful aspect of our human experience. If this has resonated with you and you'd like to reflect on your clothing choices and what they might be communicating, both to others and to yourself, try downloading my free style diary to help you with this. I'll leave the link in the show notes. So, I hope you found this episode interesting and it gave you some food for thought. I'd love to know what you think. Let me know by commenting on this episode or emailing me at claire@clairesilkcoaching.com, and I'll be sure to reply. I would also like to ask you to do me a little favour. I'd love to know what you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Anything style or confidence related. Let me know what would be useful to you. Thank you for listening to Style and Confidence, where style meets confidence for business success. If you have enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss out on our weekly confidence-building conversations. You can also connect with me over on LinkedIn as Claire Silk or on Instagram at Silk Style and Confidence for more style and mindset tips. Until next time, remember, true confidence comes from within. Style helps it shine.